Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is To Back or Not to Back. We're going to be going through a variety of crowdfunding campaigns, talking about the games, the stretch goals, the add-ons, all of that and more, and of course, should you back it or not. We have a short week for you this week because, well, there are a bunch of campaigns that I'm not covering this week because I'm going to be covering them next week because I'm out of town next week, so I'm doing something in advance. Either way, short week for you, and if there are a bunch of campaigns you're like, Alex, you missed that one, it's probably coming next week. But with that said, we're going to go ahead and start off as we usually do with our Cult of the Now. Crowdfunding is full of a lot of games that are incredibly tempting for a variety of reasons, mostly FOMO, but some other good reasons as well, and Cult of the Now is the regular reminder that you can go ahead and get great games now. You can often get great games that were on crowdfunding that you weren't sure you would be able to get now instead. And today you can go ahead and get From the Moon. This is a deal today. You actually have to see, you have to actually add it to the cart to see the final price, so you can go ahead and do that over on Game Nerds. Not sponsored. Our deal today is never are sponsored. I shouldn't say never because who knows, maybe one day they will be, but for right now, they're not sponsored. But deal today, From the Moon, this is a game that was on crowdfunding, but you can get it now. You can get it at a lower price point, you can get it without waiting, you can get it while checking up other reviews and finding out more information on the game. Cult of the Now is the regular reminder that crowdfunding is fun, but very often you can just wait and get games later instead, or now. Later's now. That's how time works that way. Later becomes now, and later could be in the past, or in the future, or in the present, depending on what perspective you are looking at that later from. Anyways, with that, we're going to go ahead and look at a bunch of crowdfunding campaigns. We're starting off with 3 in the board game adjacent category. These are, well, not board games, but they're board game adjacent. You know how it is. Starting off with the Walking Dead, Worms, and More board game advent calendars. I wasn't even sure where to put this one, because technically they are playable board games structured as advent calendars, but I think I personally, as a gamer, view this very much in the adjacent category, so here we are. But 7 days to go, 394 backers, $34,000 raised, coming to you from Mantic Games. This is a collection of 4 board game advent calendars, and I will say, just from the video, I was a little confused as to the way this is being structured, because the video kind of shows you 2, then says, here we have 2 more, and then in the actual pledge levels, you can buy the 2 more, or you can buy all 4, not the way the video was structured, which I found confusing. If you watch the video and look at the page, you'll know what I mean. This is not a big deal at all. This is just me noting my own confusion as a buyer. But that said, from Mantic, we have 4 board game advent calendars. We have Worms, The Walking Dead, Deep Space, and Barroom Brawl. All of these are, I believe, from what I saw, I believe all of these are playable board games with little pieces unlocked as you go through it. So you have to unlock stuff and content for the game as you go through the 24-day advent calendars. There are a few options for the pledge levels over here. We have £49 for the base bundle over here. That's going to give you Worms and Walking Dead. And then we have the complete collection for $120 that gives you all 4, but also gives you the free, well, not free, it's taking into account the price, but also the terrain crate, which is not a playable board game, giving you terrain that you'll unlock across those 24 days. So that's kind of what you got. You got 4 board game advent calendars, playable board games structured with, the unlocking as you go, and then a terrain crate if you back at the $120 level instead, and then of course shipping as well. As far as should you back it, should you not, or as far as will it hold its value, this is an advent calendar that you're opening as you go. It's not going to hold this value because it's specifically designed to be consumed, not that different than a legacy game. As far as whether or not you want it, whole different conversation, but that kind of comes down to whether you're intrigued. I'm intrigued, but not enough to spend. Like, these are basically the price of a full game, but for an advent calendar, which granted it is a full game, so you can argue you're getting a full game plus the enjoyment of unlocking things as you go, maybe, but I don't know. For me, I'm not quite as convinced that this would be better than a full game. It will give you an interesting experience, but either way, these are board game advent calendars from Mantic. Then we have the Modular gaming table, the New Year deals for 2025. Wormwood has another one of these campaigns. They've been jumping out a lot with these smaller modular game table campaigns. I feel like Wormwood has shifted from like, hey, we have this one giant campaign to, hey, we're tapping into local markets and extra markets and holiday deals. They have a lot more of these crowdfunding campaigns nowadays, but $43,000 raised, 12 backers. This is Wormwood's modular game table. We will not be heavily going through this. This is the same thing you've seen in a dozen other campaigns. There's nothing that I saw that was new here. There may well be something new, but nothing that I personally noticed that was new. Again, this is the downside of having too many of these. I stopped trying to look at every single one and find that one thing that shifts or different or some way, whatever. But either way, this is Wormwood's modular game table, now on GameFound. From there we have the Game Boy Geek Season 13. 140 backers, $9,800 raised, 16 days to go. Oh, wait, crossing note, $9,660 raised. It went down a little bit over there, but 142 backers. This is Game Boy Geek's support drive. Basically, if you are a content creator in the space, you will frequently run support drives in a variety of ways, whether it's your own Patreon, your own initial support drive, whether it's a Kickstarter campaign, a GameFound £100 campaign, whatever it is, content creators often do run support drives for the channels to drive additional funding, because usually if you are a content creator, the work you're putting in versus the pay you get is often not the ratio that you might think or want if you're trying to pay the bills, which is why very often content creators turn to the audiences to help supplement the revenue they get to be able to make it into a functional living job. So Game Boy Geek over here, they're running his season 13, about 100 promos for $50. That's the main offering. There are a few offerings on this page. There's the main offering for $50 for all the promos from 2025, and then additionally there's a lot of different game bundles. These are very limited, so there's like 1 or 2, or well, in this case for Matago we have 3, but most of these there's 1, 2, or 3 of these bundles, and once they're gone, once they're purchased, they're gone. So if you are interested in a particular bundle, make sure to check them out. There's a lot of these as you scroll through, and many of them have also been already taken as you get to the bottom of this scrolling over here. But that is the Game Boy Geeks. Has over 3,000 videos, 3,200 videos, something like that, and been doing a lot of reviews for a very, very long time. Moving on into the crowdfunding category, into the board game category, not the crowdfunding category, we have Star Trek Ascendancy, The Final Frontier. $1.7 million raised, 4,697 backers, and 3 days to go. This is coming to you from Gale Force 9, who previously did, well, they've done a few campaigns, but the one that put them on the map crowdfunding-wise is going to be the Firefly Big Box. Obviously, they have been on the map in the general game sense for a very long time, with a lot of games under their umbrella, and I believe they also have Dune coming to crowdfunding later as well. So they're taking some of the more popular IPs and they're bringing them into crowdfunding with big boxes, collections, all of that and more. And Star Trek Ascendancy is basically the collection of all Star Trek Ascendancy content that is put out to date. Star Trek Ascendancy being a 4X space game set in the Star Trek universe, and they're also going to give you three new factions to play as that are exclusive to GameFound. So there's a big box, there's new factions, there's tweaked cards and adjusted things, all of that and more, but effectively taking an already well-established and well-liked, I think it's a 7.8 on Board Game Geek if I'm not mistaken, taking an established and well-liked 4X game and bringing it to crowdfunding. To that end, we have a whole bunch of things to go through over here, but I won't be focusing heavily on the game itself. The game's been out for a while. It's a 4X game. You're going to be utilizing your command tokens, your actions to go around and explore the galaxy. One of the things that's interesting about this one is the nature of the space lanes. You kind of create the galaxy as you go, and you're connecting various planets using these space lanes, and that has a very unique aspect to the way the galaxy is totally different every single time you play the game, forcing you into, well, new ways of thinking, new lanes of thinking. Pun intended, very much intended on that one. But a 7.8 on Board Game Geek, and this is every faction plus 3 new civilizations, plus tweaks, plus big boxes, all of that. Which brings us, I guess, directly to the pledge levels over here, because they do have a what's in the box. I found this to be a little overwhelming and not so straightforward. It might be worth going through, but I found the actual pledge levels to be a little bit more, I would say go through the pledge levels first, and then maybe if you want to see more visuals, come back to the what's in the box section. But for the pledge levels, we have $149. This gives you all the new stuff for this campaign, gives you the big boxes, the upgraded content, and as well as those 3 GameFound exclusive playable factions that are available in this campaign and this campaign only. For $249, you get the original civilizations as well. So you're getting, again, all the GameFound content over here, all the main new content, plus the original three civilizations for the game. For $399, you're going to get all civilizations for the game. So this is the playable all-in, not the deluxe all-in. This gives you all the civilizations for the game that have been, well, ever done, including, of course, the 3 new ones, and gives you all that content for $400. And then for $499, you're getting the deluxe all-in, which also gives you those dice and those tokens, which are upgrading the experience on the table, but it's not gameplay content. There's a variety of additional add-ons if you want individual civilizations, which I guess to me, I'm like, who wants the individual? Like, I kind of want, like, you know, the bare minimum, or alternatively, all of it. But if you want individual civilizations, you want to pick and create your own bundle, you can do so over here. And then of course there's the upgrade content over here as far as the more deluxe content, the dice trays, the collection, star bases, all of those tokens are extras and upgrades over here if you want to break those down. That's basically what we got for the campaign. As far as the shipping over here, shipping's going to run you, well, it depends on the pledge, let's scroll down. Shipping's going to run you in the US over here. You only have $35 for the all-in deluxe, and then lower for various pledges. So Final Frontier is going to be 20, and then each additional pledge is 15, which is not that crazy considering how much you're seeing over here. That seems like sometimes you see these like small campaigns with huge shipping prices. I don't know if that's being subsidized, but it's just as far as the amount of content you're getting, that doesn't seem that high as far as shipping goes. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value, all of that stuff. Well, first of all, the usual thing I say about these giant reprints, which is if you weren't interested until now, always check your wallet before deciding that you're interested now. $400 or even more than that once you factor it all in is a lot of money for a game that has has been out for a very long time that you've decided you never actually cared about, but you're deciding that you care about today. But that said, looking at Firefly, my guess is this will hold its value. Firefly has done incredibly well. It's a game that's very sought after, and after the initial campaign, which raised $2.7 million, 10,000 backers, a lot of people still want it on the secondhand market, so Firefly has done well for itself. That likely will hold true for Star Trek Ascendancy. This is a game that's well liked, has been out for a while. I don't know if they have plans for more content or not, but the fact that there's 3 GameFound exclusive factions over here does mean that what you get here is going to be in demand by people who want this game, which is both a good game and a well-known, well-loved IP, which generally translates into holding its value, especially for content that you can't get otherwise. So I would say that this is expensive, but it likely will hold its value and or be more expensive if you choose to want it, if you decide you want it down the road instead. Moving on, we have Suriya. Suriya, 463 backers, 14 days to go, $127,000 raised. Suriya is coming to you from Hexa House, who have done several games. Their most recent is Barbaric, which has generally been well received, at least so far. But either way, as far as Suriya goes, Suriya is going to be a deck-building asymmetric war game. You're going to have a degree of area control, a lot of action planning, and a lot of deck building as you take control of vastly asymmetric factions. I believe there are 4 in the core box, as well as 2 separate expansions you can get as well, each adding a new, completely asymmetric faction to the game. And the general gameplay, and when I say asymmetric, I mean there's deck building, but each faction has its own deck that you're deck building from. You're effectively creating your own abilities as you go, and then trying to figure out how to take control, how to utilize, your cards, play your cards, discard them for minerals, move your units around the board, roll dice, attack the opponents, and taking control of the various bases in this game, all while you build up the asymmetry of your faction and choose the way your faction grows and changes and alters as you try to take down your opponents. Effectively, it's a very quick to learn, not that quick to play, but I mean, I don't even know, it's 60 to 120 minutes as far as the game time, but a quick to learn, quick to set up a game of area control and deck building as you go through this. Now, as far as the factions in the base game, and again, let's see, we have the all-in pledge over here. Let's see, I'm trying to think the order to show you over this. Generally, you're going to be trying to build all your bases or destroy an opponent's headquarters. That's the main objective, and then past that, it's mostly going to come down to the cards as you try to figure out how to utilize them or discard them for resources to take out your opponents. As far as the pledge levels over here, let's go to the pledge levels. So we have the core pledge for $119 over here, 119 USD for the core box game, including the Kickstarter exclusive dice tray as well. The all-in pledge, which says saving $67. I couldn't figure out the math on that one. I might be missing things, but looking at the various add-ons to the pledge, I didn't see a savings of $67. I believe I saw a savings of $8. Meaning if you got the core box plus the add-ons, or you just got the all-in pledge, it looked like you saved only $8. My math might be wrong. This is the way I added things up. I couldn't find that $67 savings. But either way, you have over here for $229, you get all the stuff at a savings. So you're getting the giant playmat plus the 2 expansions are being added on. Those are $39 each on their own, and then when you add that all together, so whatever it is, $117, and it's bumping up the pledge price by less than that, $108 or whatever it is. It's bumping up the pledge price by $108 instead of $117 in order to give you all of those, which means if you didn't care for that playmat, just go ahead and get the thing separate. You're not saving that much money, at least from what I can see, you're not saving that much money, so just get the individual expansions. Don't jump straight to that all-in unless you want everything in that all-in. That's what we have for there. Then past that, they had these dual pledge or multi-pledges. They had multiple, getting more sets at a discounted rate if you want to get all of those. As far as the add-ons, $39 for the playmat, $39 for the zone tropes, and $39 for the Voidborn, all giving you different expansions or different asymmetric factions. Past that, there's extra dice set, a story art book, the shadow shading for the miniatures, 100 limited painted all-in. So if you wanted a full-on painted all-in, they have that, but very limited. So those are the additional pledge levels or add-ons you can get for the game. As far as let me see if I can show you the factions over here, because they had great faction breakdowns. Here we go. You have the Scarab, building a nest to spawn the eggs. They're creating tunnels to various areas. Evolution for the basic units to elite units allows you to build a stronger army quickly. They had little breakdowns of this for each of the factions, and I will say, as somebody who was interested in the game, this brought me more interested in the game. Going through the individual asymmetry of the factions and seeing how each one has their own deck, their own unique aspect of how they work. You have the Syntron. The learner becomes stronger. They're full of dynamic power cards. They're more powerful even though the numbers are smaller. The sudden movement of troops with the cards create teleportation. Like the individual breakdowns of how a faction is unique make me more intrigued to puzzle out this game or to play through it, exploring the different factions. And I love the art of the cards, the way that they have these kind of landscape arts where individual cards can form a landscape. I love little things like that. Plus, of course, the art looks solid, and so I have no clue if it's AI or not. Again, whenever I say art looks good nowadays, I have that small part of me. I have no clue if either way. I don't know if it's AI. Not saying it is. not saying it isn't. Let's see it's in the FAQ now that I brought it up stupidly. I don't see it offhand over here. It might be down here, but disclaimers, AI, nope, risks. I don't know. I have no clue. I shouldn't have brought anything up. I shouldn't have said anything. Anyways, as far as should you back it, should you not, will hold its value. Suriya is not the cheapest game, but if you look at Barbaric, their last game, there's not a lot of sales because it's only just delivering, but so far it does seem like one that is mostly holding its value. I say mostly because you do have to factor in shipping amongst everything else. Shipping on this is not going to be cheap. I mean, cheap is relative, but you're looking at US is going to be $26 or $42 for the all-in, which adds to that. Well, again, same as the Star Trek, it's a lot of boxes, so it's not crazy, but it's still $42 on top of that. And looking at the original Barbaric, it looks like people were able to get their money back, less shipping perhaps. So like, you know, if you paid whatever it is, you're able to get that back, but not on top of its shipping as well. So it's one where it's going to mostly hold its value, but you'll likely lose a little bit on shipping, especially if you're looking later down the road. This is looking right after Barbaric has landed, where attention and interest is likely going to be highest. Moving on over here, we have Spokes. Spokes is a colorful cycling board game. 877 backers, $33,000 raised, 14 days to go. Spokes coming to you from Radical 8 Games, who have brought several games to crowdfunding already, but Spokes is a fast-paced racing game with an interesting mechanic in which you're going to be moving a cube around your own personal player board. You can see this little cyclist down here, and then as you cross the last color marker, you can swap that color marker in with one on the central board. Once you do that, you can move your cyclist through a chain of the same color as far as you can possibly move them, which creates this interesting idea as far as how you're trying to manipulate and adjust the main board to your advantage to be able to drive a little bit further than the other cyclists. But obviously, when you do so, you're also creating pathways for cyclists that are behind you. So kind of an inherent catch mechanic where the pathways are more optimized towards the people behind you, but if you're ahead, you're currently winning. So very well done as far as both creating a racing game as well as an inherent catch mechanic within it. There's other small little modules as well. So for example, they have a little add-on, or I think there's a freebie for those back in the crowdfunding campaign with little map overlays to create unique maps as you go. But effectively, it's a lighter abstract game disguised as a racing game. I mean, it is a racing game, but it's effectively an abstract puzzle as you try to create pathways and lanes and race across the board. I believe it's a winner second place on the Cardboard Edison Awards, so that's obviously solid over there as well. But that is going to be Spokes, the racing game. As far as the pledge levels, we have $37 for a copy of Spokes, and then they had early bird, that's all gone. So $37 is going to be what you're going to be paying for that. And then shipping over here was going to run you around $8 for in the USA, bringing your total to around $45. As far as should you back or should you not, as far as the MSRP, they talk about how it's a savings. Obviously, if you watch the show in general, you know that listed MSRPs are not savings because you can usually get those cheaper anyway whenever you buy in any online. And once you have additional shipping, that's going to take away from that. I will say the little mini expansions, and there's two. There's the freebie one that covers up the board, but there's also one that gives you little cyclists that instead of tokens, you get cyclist tokens. So a small little premium upgrade. That's the one that you can purchase instead of getting for free, but that's something else you can get over here. So as far as reasons to back, supporting the creator, guaranteed access, getting it early, and then possibly the accessibility of those little mini expansions. But as far as will it hold its value, I'm skeptical it will. This one is doing well enough that it probably will have a longer presence. Not necessarily a huge demand of it, but 881 backers, 14 days to go, does mean that there's enough demand for this one. I expect we'll see it in some way. Also, it has that accessibility to it. I think this is the kind of game that would do well in retail, and I think we'll see it later on in retail at a cheaper price point, but without some of those extras. Moving on, we have Don't Look Back, the horror miniatures game. 605 backers, $97,000 raised, 15 days left to go, and I did debate whether putting this in board game adjacent or in the board game category, because whenever I look at miniatures games, I usually put miniatures games like RPGs in the board game adjacent category. This is technically a miniatures game, so it probably should be there. Honestly, I don't know why I put it here. Now that I'm talking it over, I think I should have put it in the adjacent, and it's just, these are semantic differences. At the end of the day, we're covering it either way, but this is Don't Look Back. It's a game that came out in 2020, and this is the deluxeified version of it, but Don't Look Back is effectively a horror miniature story that you're trying to survive while you're doing so on a terrain. So you have this terrain idea over here, so it's kind of a miniatures, imagine like Final Girl, but if Final Girl were a miniatures tabletop game instead of the board game that it is. That's kind of the key premise over here. You're basically trying to figure out how to survive in a game that's going to be very dynamically generated based on the terrain, based on the dice roll. You're going to have, ideally, no two games will ever be the same as you go through a kind of miniature game experience, but with almost a tabletop presence, but with a miniatures board game tabletop presence. So this is sounding more confusing than it needs to be. Ultimately, it's a miniatures horror game, which is not a genre you usually see. There's a lot of content over here in this campaign over here. Let's see if we can scroll down to the pledge levels. We have the movie marathon, which is going to be all core items for $99. We have the single core box for $50, and then additional pledges for if you want either for a retail pledge or basically if you want the horror historian. For $745, you're getting all core plus all previous expansions, an absolute ton of content for this game if you just want to go ahead and jump straight into it all the way, which it looks like we have 17 people who are willing to jump straight into this game. Shipping is going to run you, let's see if we can scroll on shipping. Shipping's going to run you over here for the USA $10 for the single box, $15 for the all-in, and the movie historian bundle is going to be $50, which I believe is the horror historian bundle. I have to imagine that's a small misalignment on terms. And they have a little disclaimer like, hey, it seems expensive, but there's a lot. And if you look at that, for $745 worth of content, that $50 doesn't seem that crazy. But as far as should you back or should you not will hold its value, this is probably why I should have put it in the board game adjacent category. I don't know as well on these. This really much is more in the miniatures category, not the kind of thing that I know as well about, so that's why I should have put it in the board game adjacent category, because I don't have an opinion on as far as should you back it or not, which is usually the case once you move outside of traditional board games. Moving on, Fame and Fable, a fantasy board game. 3,600 backers, 15 days to go, $230,000 raised. This is one where I highly recommend you watch the video. I think the video is incredibly well done. Honestly, this to me, I was not aware of, it was not on my radar, and watching the video, I was incredibly impressed by everything about this game. From the art, the animations, the presentation, everything about this. First-time creator, Owen Davey, first-time creator, and this blew me away. Again, not necessarily mentioned in the game, but I'd say that, to me, the sheer amount of attention to detail from a first-time creator, in terms of the way the game is presented, in terms of the solo friendly, in terms of the competitive nature, in terms of everything about it. The video itself is a teach of the game. If you watch the video, you will have great animation, a great backstory on who the person is, as well as understanding how to play the game all in 5 minutes, which is a lot of information for 5 minutes, but it's enough that it probably will hook you. Like, I guarantee you, if you watch this video, there's a higher chance you will back this game. I don't know if you'll back it or not, but there's a higher chance, I can tell you that much for sure. But either way, Fame and Fable is basically, it's a competitive game of trying to build up your cards, build up your companions, and try to take down the various monsters. I believe it was 60 completely asymmetric monsters, or, variable monsters, maybe 40, I'm not sure, maybe 40 or 60 monsters in the game, and you're trying to basically take down the monsters. It has catch-up mechanics, it has companions, it has you trying to build up your cards and utilize them together to take down these monsters and then get more points than your opponents as you eventually cross the finish line, and then everyone else has one more turn. Solo mode is a little bit different, so there's a different solo board, a solo side to the game board, but all of that just giving you a pretty straightforward game that looks very accessible, looks like it'll be accessible to those new to the hobby, looks like it'll be engaging enough to those who have played other games. Overall, I was just very impressed with the general presentation of the game, the art, the mechanics, everything about this game. But as far as that, we have the core pledge over here for $38. This is giving you a retail copy of the game. That's going to be the basic retail edition of the game, not all the extras, but still, hey, $38 for this game, plus of course shipping. We have the Legend Pledge for $70. That's going to give you the deluxe edition of the game, all the extra goodies and bits for the deluxe edition of the game. There's little, action trackers, extra content over here, not extra content, extra upgrades and goodies, all of that for the Legend edition over here. And then shipping is going to run you in the USA 13 or 14 pounds, so you have to go ahead and bump that up a little bit to dollars to go ahead and get your hands on either of those pledges. As far as should you back it, should you not, will it hold its value? Hard to say on this one. This is very much goes into hard to say. They're doing a great presentation. 3,600 backers for a first-time creator is incredibly well done, and so they definitely have that audience. Also, the price point is not the cheapest. I mean, that basic retail edition of the game is going to run you, what is it, $50 plus, $53, $54 for a retail edition of the game, and the deluxe edition the game is running you closer to $90 or so to get your hands in it, and that in general is a higher price point given the level of content. I think this is selling based on the presentation, based on the video, based on a lot of that kind of drawing you into the magic without a consideration for the down the road, how will this be available, and this almost certainly will be available. This is doing well enough that it almost certainly will have a retail presence at a lower price point once you factor in, MSRP savings and free shipping if you're getting a large order and all that. So I do think this is an interesting space, and it's harder for me to pinpoint whether it'll hold its value. The retail edition almost certainly not. The deluxe edition might, because if people want this version of the game and it's hard to get your hands on it, and it's not a crazy price point for it all. So I do think this is one that you may well want to take a risk on if you are interested in that deluxe edition. If you are in that FOMO side of the camp, by all means go ahead and get it, but it's certainly not guaranteed to hold its value. It's a tricky one where the demand is there, but it is a higher price point relative to the content, and that puts me in the uncertain category on the deluxe and the almost certainly not in the retail side of things. Moving on, we have Blasphemous, the board game from Ludus Magnus Studios. 837,000 euro raised, 2,800 backers, 15 days left to go. Blasphemous, the board game, is based on Blasphemous, the video game. This is a competitive game for 1 to 4 players in which you are trying to take on the Nemesis in a variety of scenarios by taking control of your penitents, wandering around the board, trying to upgrade your penitents across the game, because it's basically 2 arcs of the game. There's trying to power yourself up so you can be more powerful and take down the Nemesis eventually in the game, and you do that by moving around the board, activating locations, taking down enemies, all of which will slowly give you various upgrades to your stats, to your cards, to your dice, trying to make you more powerful. But eventually the penitent, eventually the Nemesis is going to show up on the game board, and at that point you have a ticking clock of when things will slowly move down, and you have a limited amount of time to actually engage and take them down. That's where you trying to get more powerful is going to be incredibly important, because at first you are not powerful enough to take them down, and you need to fight them in multiple combats to eventually destroy them and win the game. And to that end, you're constantly engaging in combat, while still trying to explore the board, while engaging in the unique narrative that that particular scenario gives you, and then eventually, hopefully, taking down the Nemesis and winning the game. That's the core idea over here. There's a lot more going on. You can check out a ton of content on the game, from playthroughs to overviews, a lot of content on the game in the world of Custodia, in the world of Blasphemous. The core pledge over here is going to be 135 euro for the game. This gives you the core game, the stretch goal box, and the Penitent 1 box over here for 135 euro. For 299 euro, you get the Blasphemous core game, the stretch goals, the Penitent, and all 5 expansions, of which they're not all released yet, by the way, because what they've been doing on this campaign is they've slowly been releasing expansion information as you go through it, which I guess is traditional. It's not crazy to do that. They're slowly releasing the expansion information. So right now, or at least as of when I looked at this, there were 2 expansions currently released. Let's see the add-ons over here. We have the Return by the Flames. Maybe it's only one. Maybe only one expansion currently released, the Return by the Flames one, and then the rest are going to be coming out throughout the rest of this campaign. There's a variety of stretch goals as well, if you can go through those and see all the things added, but this is basically giving you a whole lot of content for the world of Custodia, with a bunch of expansions that aren't yet, shown, but will be shown throughout the course of this campaign. Shipping for the game is going to run you over here, the USA, 35 euro for the penance, and the 54 euro for the Custodia pledge, which again is, $60 for the shipping alone, but again, there's a lot of content. All these things, Star Trek Ascendancy, Suriya, there's a lot of shipping prices over here, but it's also for a lot of content in these cases, and it doesn't come across as that crazy, but it does still add up to the price of your pledge. If you're looking at that, that pledge levels, that 299 euro jumps up to 354 euro, which is a 1/6 jump on the pledge. It's a lot of extra money. It's the price of 2 games to go ahead and ship this, but you are getting, 18 boxes worth of games instead. But anyways, as far as should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? In general, Ludus Magnus Studios, it's hard to always say, because once upon a time I would have said absolutely yes, but over time the demand for some of the things has gone down a little bit, especially as there's a degree of miniature and big box fatigue. That said, looking at Breach, the most recent delivery, Breach so far has held its value at least so far. Now again, it's similar to Suriya, where I mentioned Suriya had Barbaric, and then Ludus Magnus Studios has Breach. Breach is the most recent delivery, but there's not a lot of sales data yet, so it's hard to see fully, but from the little that there is, it does seem like they still are holding their value. Again, similar to Suriya, possibly less shipping. People are able to get back what they pledged for the game, but not necessarily recover their shipping costs, which is once again a reminder that if you get this game, and if it's not for you, you are able to get most of your money back by selling on the secondhand market, but you certainly are going to take a hit, especially when shipping is the price point that it is. Moving on, we have Fight Deck High-Octane fighting card game. 230 backers, 15 days to go, $33,000 raised. Fight Deck is exactly what it says, the High-Octane fighting card game. If you've played Yomi, or if you've seen Yomi, it does seem most similar to that. Ultimately in this game, you're taking control of various fighters, and you can buy individual boxes of, the core pledge over here is going to be, let's see, the core pledge. Core pledge is going to be, no, not that one, $30 for a standard box. There's 4 different standard boxes, 8 fighters total, and you can choose a standard box with 2 fighters for $30, plus of course shipping. Then you have 2 standard boxes plus a playmat for $68, so it's more than the 30. It's 30 times 2 plus 8, but you're also getting the playmat as well. But then after that, there's the deluxe edition for $117, where you start getting all the characters, and then there's the deluxe plus arcade mode for $148, and the all-in for $229. So it slowly gets more and more, but once you want all 8 fighters, you're looking at $117 to go ahead and get all that. I believe this comes with the playmat, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, a free playmat of your choice, individual deck boxes, metallic tokens, all that's in the deluxe edition. But as far as the gameplay very much is a fighting card game. You're going to have cards, you're going to have blocks and low blocks and throws and high punches. You have all these different attacks and counters to those attacks, and you're trying to basically outmaneuver your opponent to create chains of combos. Eventually a player might fall, and then you have a kind of a recover action. You can try to anticipate that. So it very much just is a fighting card game in line with games like Yomi, in line like games like, oh my gosh, what's that game? Not Battalion, no. Oh my gosh, there's that fighting game that I am blanking on the name. But there's a lot of these kind of fighting games. The one that's Exceed. Exceed a something system. Exceed was built off another system that I'm blanking on the name, but that's the one that I was trying to think of, but I can't recall. There's a lot of these kind of fighting games where you try to anticipate your opponent, utilizing unique fighters and the ways they operate. This is another one. I couldn't tell you necessarily what makes this one stand out more than other. It looks cool. Visually it looks cool. It looks like they're presenting it well. All of that stuff is good. There are a lot of these games, and you have to know them a little better to know the unique aspects of where one shines over another. But as far as shipping over here, shipping is going to run you, of USA, you're looking at $15 for the standard box, $23 for 2, and $24 for the deluxe tier and above. So again, that's going to add on to the price point, and that brings us to the should you back or should you not, and unfortunately that's where I'm looking at the number of backers in this one. I believe this is a first time creator. Yeah, first time creator over here, 230 backers, 15 days to go. This is very well put together overall. The presentation is great, the pledge levels are great, everything's great, but at the end of the day, they're pulling in 230 backers currently, which just means the level of demand isn't there to the level that I would want to see to be confident something will hold its value. I think overall 230 backers, and again this will go up before the end of the campaign, it's just not enough to be confident that this is one that's going to have that longer term demand. They're doing a great job presenting it, so that's great, and if obviously that the upside of this, or upside depending on how you look at it, is the fact that something like this, because it has so few backers, it does mean that this is likely your best chance to get your hands on it if you want to guarantee access to it, but it also means that it's less likely to hold its value down the road. There's less likely to be that demand for it. Which brings us to our last campaign of the day. We have Cities of Venus Survivors. 440 backers, $47,000 raised, 16 days to go, and this, to be very clear, is a standalone game. I say that because I first saw this and thought it was an expansion because there is a Cities of Venus from the same creator, but no, he's doing a series of games set in the same universe, but this is a standalone game. This is not an expansion to their previous game that was called Cities of Venus something else. I don't recall what it was. But this is coming to you from, from Tin Robot Games, who they've done a bunch of smaller games, and they've leaned into something larger with their last Cities of Venus campaign, and they're doing that once again. This is a polyomino, dice manipulation, and mech exploration. You're effectively exploring the surface of Mars, and as you uncover things, you're going to be placing down polyominoes, which are going to be building up your tableau as you add those dice to it. It almost very much, like to me, I got strong vibes of trying to combine Planet Unknown with Barren Park, and the baby is Cities of Venus Survivors. Like, it has strong elements of both in terms of the Planet Unknown. In terms of Barren Park has a small little tiles that you can be adding out, and then the Planet Unknown aspect, well, I guess space and polyominoes to begin with, but overall it seems like it is leaning into that, simultaneous, the works well with a variety of player counts. So the base game is going to be 1 to 4 players. There's an expansion version or a deluxe version that will go up to 6 players, and it's giving you polyomino space exploration. As far as the pledge levels, and then they also have the Chronicles. This is part of the Chronicle, like I mentioned. They have Cities of Venus Survivors, which is a standalone sequel to City of Venus Lost Contact. As far as pledge levels over here, if you go down here, it's going to be 4 players for $80, 80 US dollars over here for the game, 115 Canadian, and the 6th player is going to be $100, which is giving you the Ultimate Premium Edition of the game, but also accommodating up to 6 players. Now, this will not have a retail presence. The last one did not, this one will not as well, which does factor into, if you want to get this is the best time to go ahead and guarantee access to it, because this kind of game is just not going to have that long-term retail. We also have options to get the original game as well, so there's options over here, Chronicles 1 and 2 bundle for 1 to 4 players for $159, or Chronicles 1 and 2 bundle for 1 to 6 players for $200. If you want to get any of the previous, well, not any, if you want to get the previous Cities of Venus game as well, which again is a whole different game as far as the mechanics, just take place in the same shared universe. And then as far as shipping you're looking at, if you go to US over here, where's US? It's in the second one, you're looking at $25 or $50 added onto the price point as well. As far as the should you back or should you not, will it hold its value? I'm skeptical it'll hold its value. The price point on this one versus the content you're getting is just on the higher end. This is more of that small publisher tax, so to speak, where it's not their fault. It's just that when you are a small publisher, sometimes you're working with lower margins, lower ability to create a larger amount, and you still have to cover all your overhead that way, which sometimes means that games that are going to be in this range just are a little bit more than what I'd like to see them at relative to what other games are out there. The downside is that still does mean that in in order to get this game, you kind of have to be looking at it as you want this specific game, not like you're trying to look at which games to add from a large pool of games. I'm skeptical that this one will hold its value overall. There's demand enough for it with 439 backers, but not a ton of demand, and it certainly is priced highly relative to the content you're getting on it. And that is basically all we have for the games, which means it's time for our picks of the week. Picks of the week are where I pick two games. The game that is most likely to hold its value, and the game that is my personal interest pick of the week. To the most likely to hold its value part, I'm going to go with Star Trek Ascendancy, The Final Frontier. While there are several games here that fall into the adjacent category, Suriya, Blasphemous, they all fall into the mostly holding its value, I think this is the one that has the most likely chance of holding its value fully, even factoring shipping, just because it has that additional aspect of a well-rated game, a well-loved game, a beloved IP, already established, a lot of things going in its favor for Star Trek Ascendancy that Blasphemous and Suriya don't have going for it. As far as my personal interest pick of the week, my personal interest pick of the week is going to be Fame and Fable. And I did debate between this and Spokes, by the way. Spokes was very close, so, you want to give a shout out to that one. But Fame and Fable does look very compelling. I don't know if it's one that I actually would like after playing or not, but the presentation on this one definitely hooked me. I'm definitely much more interested in this one than I was before watching the video, before diving into this campaign. But overall, this is going to be my personal interest pick of the week, the game I most want to play, at least as of right now. And that is basically everything, which means we have upcoming campaigns. We have a few things. We have Champions of Midgard launching tomorrow, as well as Manhattan Project Energy Empire, two newer editions of older established games, both launching tomorrow on Kickstarter, and that is what we have for our upcoming campaigns. Which means that's everything. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one. What happens when a telescope and a microscope crash into each other? They kaleidoscope.